Who is Alexander the Great? When you see the Great after someone's name, you know the person was probably pretty special. To build an empire stretching from Europe to India, you have to be a truly great leader. If you can do it by the time you're 32 years old, then people are going to remember you for thousands of years. My name is Alexander, and I am that man. Don't get me wrong, I had a good start in life. It's a lot easier building an empire when you start off as the son of a king. But that didn't mean I had everything handed to me. When my father died, his enemies thought I'd be a pushover. They soon found out the truth. They put up statues of me across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. This map shows the vast empire I built with the help of my Macedonian armies. Mediterranean Sea, key Alexander's empire, Macedonia, Thrace, Black Sea, Lydia, Phrygia, Syria, Egyptus, Armenia, Caspian Sea, Cappadocia, Media, Babylonia, Red Sea, Persian Gulf, Persis, Drangayana, Carmania, India, Gedrosia, Arcosia, Sogdiana. What's next? Building empires is great, but I was really an explorer and a man of action. I was never satisfied with just ruling my home country of Macedonia or even Greece or Egypt. I was always thinking about the next land or enemy to conquer. I suppose you could say I didn't know when to stop. Documented. Alexander the Great achieved incredible things at a very young age. His victories have been celebrated throughout history. If you keep a journal, you can record your own successes and ambitions, including what you think and feel about them. A boy with a big future. From the day I was born around July 20th, 356 BCE, people started making up stories about me. Some said that I was the son of Zeus, the chief of the Greek gods. Others said that my mother had dreamed of being struck by a thunderbolt before I was born. It's always nice to be talked about, but I think most of these stories were invented by my mother, Olympias. She was a Greek princess who could be very tough and cunning. I spent my childhood in Pella, Macedonia, with Mom and my sister Cleopatra. What about Dad? Well, Dad, or King Philip II of Macedonia, as most people called him, was never around much. Even on the day I was born, he was off fighting a battle. Mighty Macedonia. Macedonia claimed to be one of the Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta to the south, but many Greeks were not so sure. They thought the warlike Macedonians were barbarians. However, when Alexander was young, his father was in the process of uniting the Macedonians into a powerful military force. Philip II of Macedonia. Alexander's father was an impressive soldier in his own right. He established Macedonia as the most powerful country in the region and was chosen to lead Greek forces against their biggest enemy, the Persian Empire. Education. King Philip may have preferred spending time with his armies rather than his family, but he wanted to make sure I had a good education. Macedonians were great fighters, but if you wanted teachers, Athens was the best place to find them. Greek teachers, artists, and scientists often visited Pella, and I listened to everything they could tell me. Classes were important, but I really wanted to see some action. My father was always fighting one war or another, and I couldn't wait until it was my time. I loved wrestling, riding, and hunting with my friends. Bucephalus. When I was 12 years old, I finally managed to impress my father. He had been given a horse that no one could tame. This was my chance to prove myself to the old warrior. I trained Bucephalus well, and he went on to be my war horse for most of my life. The Greek world. Ancient Greece was not one country. It was made up of several city-states, of which the most powerful were Athens, Sparta, and Thebes. By the time of Alexander's birth, the state's power was declining. They would soon be under the control of Macedonia. However, Greece's art and ideas still had a powerful influence on the ancient world. This map shows Macedonia and the Greek states around the time of my birth. Epirus, Macedonia, Thessaly, Thebes, Peloponnese, Sparta, Athens, Thrace, Byzantium. Hellespont, Phrygia. Top teacher. The best teacher I ever had was Aristotle. You wouldn't have expected us to get along well. Aristotle liked to think and study the world around him, while I was more likely to act first and think later. But he really opened my eyes to subjects from politics to science. Later, I would always try to send plants and other things from my travels back to my old teacher. Storytelling. I loved the amazing Greek stories I learned with Aristotle. My favorites were the stories of Homer. The Iliad told the story of a war between Greece and Troy. Another great story was the Odyssey, in which Odysseus comes home from Troy by the scenic route. Soon I'd be setting off on a long journey of my own. Aristotle didn't just teach me. He also taught my friends Nearchus and Hephaestion, who stayed with me long after I'd stopped playing and had begun my real battles. The young are passionate and quick-tempered. They follow their impulses. They are ruled by their emotions. They strive for honor, especially for victory, and desire them both much more than money. Aristotle's thoughts about young people. Was he thinking of his student Alexander? Aristotle. Aristotle was not just Alexander's teacher. He was also one of the greatest thinkers in history. He spent much of his childhood at the royal court in Macedonia before joining the academy of the great thinker Plato in Athens. Aristotle's ideas shaped the study of science just as much as Alexander's conquests shaped the world. The teenage regent. By the time I was 16, I really thought I knew it all. I'd had the best teachers that Macedonian gold could buy. I could fight and hunt as well as anyone. Now I just needed a job. My father was always planning the next war, so he left me in charge of Macedonia. I decided to begin by taking an army to give the nearby Thracians a good thrashing. I even set up a new city there. It's always tough coming up with names, but I thought Alexandroupolis had a good ring to it. My father was turning his attention to Greece. They may have been clever, but they were no match for the mighty Macedonian army. We defeated a Greek army at the Battle of Chaeronea. I got to visit Athens. It was an impressive city, but the Athenians now had to do what the Macedonians told them. Macedonians were too busy fighting to worry about creating great buildings like the Parthenon in Athens. Olympias. Alexander's mother was a strong woman in her own right, and she did not always see eye to eye with King Philip. When the Macedonian king chose to marry a younger woman in addition to her, Olympias took Alexander to live with her brother. After Philip's death, Olympias returned to Macedonia and ordered that her rival wife be murdered. The League of Corinth. By 338 BCE, Philip had made it clear that he was now in charge of all the Greek city-states. He made this formal when he organized them into a group called the League of Corinth, with Philip in charge. The first thing the group decided was that Philip would lead a combined Greek and Macedonian army against the Persian Empire. Disputes with Dad. No sooner had he sorted out the Greeks than my father was planning his next campaign. Seriously, this man did not know when to quit. He was planning an expedition against the giant Persian Empire. The worst thing was, he wasn't going to take me with him. I had to stay and watch over Macedonia. Boring. I was already arguing with the old fool because he was trying to keep me in my place. He even had some of my friends banished from Macedonia. Bucephalus carried me into all my battles. I even named a city after my faithful horse. Murder in Macedonia. Then, at my sister's wedding, of all places, Philip was murdered by one of his bodyguards. Obviously, we were all terribly upset, but it did make things a bit simpler. Philip's power games were a bit of a pain. With him out of the way, I could take on the top job. Darius III. It wasn't just in Macedonia that being king was dangerous. Darius III, Center, came to lead the Persian Empire after the two previous kings had been killed. He may have ordered the murder of Philip to stop the Macedonian invasion of his lands. Who murdered Philip? The official story was that Philip's murderer, Pausanias, had a grudge against this king, but the people who had the most to gain from his death were Alexander and his mother. Alexander and his father had argued, and maybe Philip was planning to make someone else king after him. The historical mystery of whether Alexander killed his father will never be solved. Master of Macedonia. The days after Philip's death were some of the most dangerous times in my whole life. There were plenty of powerful people who wanted to lead Macedonia. Some of them even thought I had arranged the murder of my father. Once I was king, I couldn't wait to get out of Pella, Macedonia, and see the world. The Macedonian army accepted me as king, which was a very good start. However, most people thought Philip's son, that's me, would be a bit of a pushover. There were rumblings of discontent everywhere. Persian plans. I hadn't been brought up to spend my entire life ruling Macedonia. I needed to sort out my enemies close to home, and then I was planning to finish the job my father had started. I went to meet the Greek states and convince them that I was the man to take revenge on the Persians for their past attacks on Greece. You know you're really a king when they put your picture on the coins. Document it. How do you think Alexander felt when he became king of Macedonia? He could have written his feelings in a diary. Your private feelings about something may not be the same as what you tell people in public. Alexander may have had worries about whether he was ready to take over as king, but he would not have shown that to his soldiers. For being more bent upon action and glory than either upon pleasure or riches, he would have chosen rather to succeed to a kingdom involved in troubles and wars, which would have afforded him frequent exercise of his courage. The Roman writer Plutarch explains Alexander's hunger for glory. First fights. Before I could think about the Persians, I needed to make sure Macedonia was safe. I dealt with the disgusting barbarians to the north and west of the country. These quick campaigns also proved to my Macedonian troops that I meant business. The Greeks were supposed to be cultured and smart and not at all like the barbarians of the north. But I soon discovered that some of them weren't so bright. The people of Thebes heard a rumor that I was dead. They soon realized their mistake when I returned to crush their silly little rebellion. I had Thebes burned to the ground. Rough justice. The Greek rebellions had to be stamped out once and for all. I ordered that all of Thebes had to be destroyed. The Greeks may not have liked me, but I never had as much trouble from them after that. The Macedonian army. There were probably more than 35,000 men in the Macedonian army when Alexander became king. They were the strongest and best trained army in Europe. Greek armies normally used heavily armed foot soldiers called hoplites, but the Macedonians used fast-moving cavalry, soldiers on horseback, to break up enemy troop formations. After the cavalry had broken the enemy lines, the heavily armed foot soldiers would go to work. Greek grumbles. I really wanted the Greeks to like me. They always thought we Macedonians were beneath them, but I had been brought up as a Greek. It might take them a while to forgive me for destroying Thebes. Maybe if I could defeat the old enemy, Persia, they would realize that I was really on their side. The Persians were also one enemy that my father never defeated. If I could defeat them, then I would be the one whom everyone remembered. Philip who? Leaving home. In spring 334 BCE, I said goodbye to my homeland and my family. I did not know if I would ever return, and I did wonder what would happen if I didn't defeat the Persians. But I soon put these thoughts out of my mind as I led my forces toward the Persian Empire. My father's general Parmenion was already waiting for me at the Hellespont, the narrow strip of water where Europe meets Asia. The Persian Empire. The Persian Empire stretched from the borders of India to Asia Minor in modern Turkey. Under King Darius I, the Persians attacked Athens and had been defeated at the Battle of Marathon. Although its power had declined by Alexander's time, the empire remained a powerful enemy. I was never one to hang back when it came to a battle. Here I am attacking the Persians.